When the guns of World War II fell silent, the skies were filled with thousands of victorious P-51 Mustangs. But for these legendary warbirds, the end of the war wasn't the end of their story. In fact, it was just the beginning of a new, unexpected chapter. What happens to a hero when the war is over? For the P-51, the answer is a tale of survival, adaptation, and enduring legacy. Stick around as we explore the incredible post-war journey of the P-51 Mustang. As the world shifted from the chaos of global conflict to the fragile peace of the post-war era, military doctrine was rapidly changing. The jet age had arrived, and propeller-driven fighters like the Mustang were suddenly seen as relics. Thousands of these magnificent machines were declared surplus. Imagine, a fighter that had just been the pinnacle of aviation technology was now being sold for scrap. Many were unceremoniously crushed, melted down, or sold for as little as a few $1,000s. A war-winning machine sold for less than a new car. It seemed like the Mustang was destined to become a forgotten footnote in aviation history. But the world wasn't quite done with this piston-engine warrior. Just 5 years after World War II ended, conflict erupted on the Korean Peninsula. The brand-new jet fighters of the U.S. Air Force, like the F-80 Shooting Star, were masters of high-altitude combat, but they had a serious problem. They were too fast and thirsty for fuel to be effective at low-level ground support. They couldn't loiter over the battlefield or precisely deliver bombs and rockets like their predecessors. Suddenly, the old Mustang was needed again. Pulled from storage, boneyards, and Air National Guard units, the P-51, now redesignated as the F-51, was thrown back into the fight. In Korea, the Mustang's long range and ability to carry a heavy payload made it the perfect tool for ground attack, close air support, and interdiction missions. 51 pilots flew deep into enemy territory, strafing supply lines, bombing bridges, and providing crucial support for troops on the ground. However, this new role came with immense danger. Flying low and slow made the Mustangs prime targets for anti-aircraft fire. The liquid-cooled Merlin engine, a masterpiece of engineering, was also its Achilles heel. A single well-placed bullet could sever a coolant line, causing the engine to seize and forcing the pilot to bail out or crash land in hostile territory. Despite these risks, the Mustang pilots pressed on, proving the old warhorse still had plenty of fight left in it. Far from the battlefields of Korea, another new nation was fighting for its very existence. In 1948, the newly formed state of Israel was in a desperate struggle for independence. Under a strict arms embargo, they had to be creative to build an air force. Through clandestine operations and smuggling, Israel managed to acquire a handful of P-51 Mustangs. These were not pristine, factory-fresh fighters. They were cobbled together, often in poor condition, but they were a lifeline. Against the Egyptian Air Force, which flew British-made Spitfires, the Israeli Mustangs proved surprisingly effective. They flew reconnaissance missions, attacked ground targets, and even scored air-to-air victories. Perhaps the most legendary tale of the Israeli Mustangs came during the 1956 Suez Crisis. In a daring and audacious move, Israeli pilots flew their Mustangs at treetop level, so low that they used their wingtips to physically sever telephone and telegraph wires, cutting enemy communication lines. It was a mission that perfectly blended pilot skill with the Mustang's rugged design, a testament to the aircraft's versatility. The P-51 had become a symbol of ingenuity and survival for the fledgling Israeli Air Force. While Mustangs were still fighting wars overseas, back home in the United States, they found a new, high-speed calling: air racing. The post-war years were the golden age of the national air races, and the surplus P-51s were the perfect platform. With their powerful engines and sleek aerodynamic design, they were born to go fast. Pilots and mechanics, many of whom were veterans who had flown or worked on these planes during the war, pushed the Mustang to its absolute limits. They tinkered, modified, and streamlined them, clipping wings, installing souped-up engines, and creating some of the fastest piston-engine aircraft the world has ever seen. Races like the Cleveland Air Races and later, the Reno Air Races, became the ultimate playground for the Mustang. Names like Voodoo, Strega, and Dago Red became legends in the racing circuit, often exceeding 500 miles per hour. These weren't just races. They were a high-speed laboratory pushing the boundaries of propeller-driven flight. The P-51, an aircraft designed for combat, had transformed into a thoroughbred of the skies, captivating crowds with its raw speed and the thunderous roar of its Merlin engine. This racing legacy continues to this day, with highly modified Mustangs still battling for the top spot at Reno. The Mustang service wasn't limited to just a few conflicts. For decades after World War II, it remained a frontline fighter in the air forces of dozens of countries around the globe. From Sweden to the Philippines, Indonesia to Guatemala, the P-51 was a cost-effective and reliable solution for nations that couldn't afford the latest jet fighters. It served as a fighter, an attacker, and a reconnaissance plane, a true jack-of-all-trades for these smaller air arms. In the Dominican Republic, Mustangs served all the way into the 1980s, an incredible lifespan for a World War II design. The Mustang even holds a unique and somewhat strange distinction in military history. It participated in the last dogfight between piston-engine fighters. This occurred during the bizarre 1969 Football War, a 4-day conflict between El Salvador and Honduras. Both sides flew American-made propeller aircraft from the World War II era. In the skies over Central America, Salvadoran P-51 Mustangs engaged in aerial combat with Honduran F-4U Corsairs. It was a surreal echo of the past, a final, dramatic duel between two of the greatest fighters of their generation, long after the rest of the world had moved on to jets. By the 1960s and 70s, the operational life of most Mustangs was finally coming to an end. Many were once again destined for the scrapyard, but this time a new movement was emerging, one dedicated to saving these historic aircraft. This was the birth of the Warbird preservation movement. Pioneers and passionate collectors like Ed Maloney, who founded the Planes of Fame Air Museum, recognized that these weren't just obsolete machines. They were flying artifacts, tangible pieces of history. They began rescuing Mustangs from boneyards in America and remote airfields in Central America, often paying little more than scrap value. The restoration process was a labor of love, requiring immense skill, dedication, and money. But the result was breathtaking. These once-forgotten fighters were brought back to their former glory, polished and roaring, looking just as they did in their wartime prime. The value of a P-51 Mustang skyrocketed. The plane that was once sold for a few $1,000s now became a multi-million-dollar treasure. Today, these restored Mustangs are the stars of air shows around the world, their iconic shape and the unforgettable sound of their Merlin engine thrilling new generations. They've appeared in movies from Empire of the Sun to Top Gun Maverick, cementing their place in popular culture. They continue to set records and inspire awe wherever they fly. From the brink of extinction to a celebrated icon, the post-war story of the P-51 Mustang is as remarkable as its wartime service. It's a story of a machine that refused to become obsolete, a design so brilliant that it found new purpose in war, in racing, and finally, in preservation. The Mustang is more than just an airplane. It's a symbol of an era, a tribute to the pilots who flew it, and a living piece of history that continues to grace our skies. It's a timeless legend that thankfully was saved from the scrap heap to inspire us all. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the Mustang's post-war life, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from aviation history. See you next time.